The wind moved through the empty streets like it had nowhere else to be. Snow collected against fences, drifted across the frozen road, and wrapped the world in a quiet white hush. Every gust seemed to whisper through the broken alleys, brushing the edges of old posters and scattering forgotten leaves. The town looked abandoned, but a faint sound broke the silence, the steady rhythm of something rolling over the cracked pavement. It wasn't a car. It was slower, softer, almost uncertain, as if it wasn't sure where to go. A wheelchair. Inside it sat a man bundled in an old brown coat, his face pale from the cold, his hands trembling around the worn rubber of the wheels. His name was Ethan Ward, though no one had said it out loud in a long time. Once he'd been a mechanic, the kind of man who could make broken things live again, but now he was the broken thing. His legs, still wrapped in a blanket, hadn't moved in 2 years. Every morning, Ethan rolled out of the half-collapsed shelter he called home and made his slow journey down the same empty street. Not because he had anywhere to be, but because movement reminded him that he was still alive. On that bitter winter morning, as he reached the corner where the old bakery used to be, something caught his eye. A flash of red, faint, half buried under the snow. He stopped, his breath forming clouds in the air. With effort, he leaned forward, brushed away the frost, and pulled out a small toy car. It was scratched, one wheel missing, but the paint was still bright. Cherry red, like fire against the snow. Ethan turned it over in his hands. A memory surfaced. His son, Lucas, laughing as he raced the same toy across the living room floor. That was before the accident. Before everything went dark, the cold bit deeper, but Ethan couldn't stop staring at the car. He whispered softly, "Guess you found your way back. Little buddy?" His voice cracked in the empty street. He tucked the toy into his coat pocket and rolled forward again, the snow crunching under his wheels. He didn't know why, but the small piece of plastic suddenly made the world feel less empty. At the far end of the street, a faint sound reached him, the creak of a door opening. From behind a broken-down bus stop, a figure appeared, small, shivering. A boy, maybe 9 or 10 years old, his clothes soaked and his eyes wary. He clutched a paper bag against his chest, as if guarding treasure. Ethan slowed. "Hey, kid, you lost?" The boy didn't answer. He just watched him. A man in a wheelchair, a stranger in the snow. "It's okay," Ethan said gently. "I won't hurt you." Still the boy stayed back. His lips were blue from the cold. Ethan sighed, reached into his pocket, and pulled out the small toy car. "You like cars?" he asked, rolling it across his gloved palm. For the first time, the boy's eyes flickered with curiosity. He took a hesitant step forward. "This one's a racer," Ethan continued, forcing a smile. "Fastest thing on 4 wheels. Used to belong to my son." The boy stopped a few feet away. "Where is he?" he asked quietly. Ethan looked at the snow, the smile fading. "He's not around anymore." The boy nodded slowly. "Mine's not either." Something in the way he said it, flat, resigned, cut deeper than the cold wind. Ethan didn't ask questions. He simply held out the toy. "Here," he said. "You can have it." The boy hesitated, then reached out with trembling fingers and took it. He stared at it for a long moment, then looked up. "Thanks," he whispered. Ethan nodded. "What's your name, kid?" "Noah." "Noah," Ethan repeated, as if trying to anchor the name in the world. "That's a strong name. You hungry, Noah?" The boy's stomach answered before he could. Ethan gave a small smile. "Thought so." He turned his chair and gestured down the street. "Come on, I've got something back at my place. It's not much, but it's warm." Noah hesitated again, glancing around the empty street. Then quietly he followed. Ethan's shelter was a hollowed-out service garage at the edge of town. Rusted walls, cracked windows, and the lingering scent of oil and dust. He wheeled inside first, the metal door creaking behind them. The place was dimly lit by a single hanging bulb connected to an old car battery. A small heater hummed weakly in the corner, its glow barely cutting through the cold. "Make yourself at home," Ethan said, gesturing to an overturned crate near the heater. "That's the VIP seat. Noah sat down slowly, still holding the toy car. His eyes moved around the room, the scattered tools, the photographs pinned to the wall, and the single blanket folded neatly on a cot. Ethan opened a can of soup and poured it into a dented pot. As the heater warmed it, the smell of tomatoes filled the air. "You've been out there long?" Ethan asked. "A while," Noah said quietly. "Since the storm started. Parents?" The boy shook his head. Ethan said nothing for a while. The only sound was the bubbling of soup. Then he ladled it into 2 chipped mugs and handed one over. Noah took it carefully, warming his hands around it. "You used to fix cars?" he asked, noticing the tools. "Yeah," Ethan said. "Used to fix everything, really. Engines, radios, bikes. But some things," he paused, looking at his legs, "some things can't be fixed." Noah didn't know what to say. He just nodded, taking a sip. Ethan studied him, the dirt on his face, the shadows under his eyes. He looked too small for the weight he carried. After a while, Noah set his mug down. "I used to have a bike," he said softly. "Red one. My dad fixed it for me once." Ethan smiled faintly. "Red's the best color. Makes it go faster." That earned a tiny grin from Noah. Outside, the wind howled again, shaking the old walls. But inside, for the first time in a long while, there was warmth, not from the heater, but from 2 broken souls finding a flicker of connection in the cold. Night fell, and Ethan showed Noah where to sleep, an extra blanket laid on the cot. The boy curled up, clutching the toy car to his chest. Ethan watched him for a long time, the soft glow of the bulb reflecting in his eyes. He whispered to himself, "Guess we both found something to fix tonight." He turned down the light. The wind outside carried the sound of distant chimes, faint, fragile, but full of promise. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt something stir inside him. Hope. The morning light crept through the cracked window like a shy visitor. Dust floated in the air, turning gold where the sunlight touched it. The old garage was quiet except for the faint hiss of the heater and the steady rhythm of Ethan's breathing. Noah stirred first. He blinked against the pale light, momentarily unsure of where he was. Then he saw the blanket over him, the toy car beside his hand, and the man in the wheelchair watching silently from across the room. "Morning," Ethan said softly. The boy nodded. "It's still snowing." Ethan turned his head toward the small window. "Yeah, but not as bad as last night. Looks like it's letting up." Noah sat up and rubbed his eyes. "You always live here?" "Used to live somewhere else," Ethan said, his voice low. "Had a house, a family. Then things changed." The boy didn't press. He just looked down at the toy car, rolling it gently across the blanket. "I used to have a house too," he whispered. Ethan's gaze softened. "What happened?" Noah didn't answer right away. He just kept rolling the little car. "My mum got sick. Dad tried to get her medicine, but he never came back. Then people came, took everything. I ran." His voice cracked near the end. The small space filled with silence again. A silence heavy with what neither of them said out loud. Ethan finally spoke, his voice rough. "You did good, kid. You made it through the storm." Noah shrugged. "Didn't feel like it." Ethan smiled faintly. "Surviving never feels like winning, but sometimes it's the same thing." The hours passed slowly. Ethan fixed the heater's connection using an old wrench, and Noah explored the garage. He found a shelf of dusty tools, a half-repaired bicycle frame, and a cracked photograph pinned to the wall. Ethan standing beside a woman and a young boy, all 3 smiling, sunlight pouring over them. "Is that your family?" Noah asked quietly. Ethan looked up from his work. His eyes landed on the photo, and something in his chest tightened. "Yeah," he said after a long pause. "That was a long time ago." Noah stepped closer. "Your son looks my age." "He was." Ethan forced a smile. "Loved cars. Used to help me fix them after school. Always said he'd build his own one day." "What happened to him?" Ethan's hands froze on the wrench. The metal slipped, clanging to the floor. For a moment, He didn't speak. When he did, his voice was barely a whisper. "Accident," he said. "We were driving home from the workshop one night. Black ice on the road. I woke up in the hospital." He didn't. Noah didn't move. The air between them grew heavy. Ethan turned away, pretending to adjust the heater, but his eyes glistened in the faint light. "Lost my legs too," he added quietly. "After that, I stopped fixing things." The boy stared at him, the weight of that confession sinking deep. Then, without saying a word, Noah picked up a small screwdriver from the shelf and began turning the loose screws on the broken bicycle frame. Ethan looked over, puzzled. "What are you doing?" "Fixing it," the boy said simply. Ethan blinked, surprised, almost amused, then leaned back in his chair. For the first time in a long while, a genuine smile spread across his face. By afternoon, the snow had eased into a slow, steady fall. The world outside was quiet again, but the garage felt alive, filled with small sounds of work, the scrape of tools, the murmur of shared focus. Ethan taught Noah how to tighten the brake line, how to check the chain's tension. Noah watched carefully, his hands shaking slightly, but eager to learn. "You've got good hands, kid," Ethan said. "Better than mine these days." Noah grinned shyly. "You think we can fix it?" Ethan looked at the half-repaired bike. The frame bent, the wheels rusted him, and nodded. "Yeah, with some time and maybe a miracle or two." The boy laughed, a small, pure sound that filled the cold air like music. That night, as the storm returned outside, the two sat near the heater, sharing the last can of soup. The dim light cast long shadows on the walls. "You ever think about leaving this place?" Noah asked. Ethan looked up. "Leaving?" "Yeah, going somewhere warm, somewhere with no snow." Ethan chuckled softly. "Used to dream about that, Florida maybe, or the coast. But dreams change when the road ends." "What if it doesn't?" Noah asked. "What if the road's just buried under snow?" Ethan's smile faded into thought. He hadn't expected that kind of hope from someone so young, or someone who'd lost so much. "Maybe," he said finally, "maybe it's still there, just hard to see." Noah nodded, satisfied with that answer. "Then maybe we can find it. Together." Ethan didn't reply, but the words stayed with him long after the boy had fallen asleep. Later that night, Ethan couldn't rest. He watched the snow swirl outside the window, remembering the man he used to be. Strong, certain, alive. Somewhere in the blur of headlights and sirens 2 winters ago, he'd buried not just his son, but himself. But now, across the room, a boy was sleeping beside a half-fixed bicycle, the same age Lucas would have been. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt a quiet stirring inside his chest. Hope, fragile but real. He turned toward the old shelf and reached for a dusty metal box. Inside were pieces of his past, spare parts, screws, and a small photo of his son holding the same red toy car. Ethan smiled sadly. Then he took out a few tools and began working again. The creak of metal filled the silence, a soft rhythm that carried through the night. And in that moment, under the cold breath of winter, the broken man began to rebuild, not just a bicycle, but something deeper. By morning, the snow had stopped. The sun hung low, spilling pale gold across the empty streets. It wasn't warm, but it was light. And after weeks of grey, that was enough. Ethan was already awake, his hands stained with grease and metal dust. The old bicycle stood upright beside him, its rusted parts cleaned, its chain oiled, and its bent frame straightened as best he could manage. It wasn't perfect, the back tire wobbled slightly, but it stood. When Noah woke, his eyes widened. "You finished it." Ethan smiled, weary but proud. "Almost. Needs a few more turns, but she's got life in her again." Noah scrambled off the cot, grinning as he ran a hand along the handlebars. "It's beautiful," Ethan chuckled. "Beautiful's a stretch, but she'll ride. That's what matters." Noah looked up, eyes gleaming. Can I try? Ethan hesitated. Not yet. Roads are still frozen. One wrong turn, you'll be eating snow for breakfast. The boy laughed, but Ethan could see the spark in his expression, that same light Lucas used to have whenever they fixed something together. It tugged at his chest, sharp and bittersweet. He wheeled himself closer, tapping the bike's frame with his knuckles. You know, this thing used to belong to a mail carrier. Old guy. Said he rode it through every season. Rain, heat, snow, never gave up. Guess that's why I kept it. Noah smiled. Guess it found the right people to come back to. Ethan looked at him for a long moment. Yeah, he said softly. Maybe it did. The day passed quietly. They repaired the last few bolts, checked the tires, and shared the final scraps of food. The heater had started to flicker, its battery nearly drained, but neither of them complained. For once, the silence felt peaceful. By afternoon, the sound of distant engines broke through the calm, trucks rumbling somewhere beyond the ridge. Noah froze. What is it? Ethan asked. The boy's eyes darkened. Those people, the ones who took our house, they had trucks like that. Ethan's hands clenched on his wheels. You think it's them? Noah nodded slightly. Ethan didn't hesitate. Then we're not staying here. He rolled toward the back wall, where a large tarp hung over a rusted side door. There's an old road out behind the hill, he said. If we follow it west, it'll take us to the railway line. Might still be a supply camp there, but how? Noah asked, glancing at the snow outside. You can't, Ethan interrupted with a smile. Can't walk, yeah. But I can still roll. He pointed toward the bike. And you can ride. Noah looked uncertain. It's too far. Ethan's voice turned firm but gentle. Kid, we've both already come too far to stop now. They packed what little they had, a blanket, the small toolbox, 2 cans of soup, and tied them to the back of the bicycle. Noah zipped his thin jacket and helped push Ethan's wheelchair through the snow. It was hard, the wheels sticking, but they didn't give up. When they finally reached the open road, Ethan looked back once. The garage, his shelter, his prison, stood silent beneath the sun. For a moment he almost wheeled back. But then he felt the wind against his face, smelled the clean air, and remembered Noah's words. What if the road's just buried under snow? He turned forward. Let's go. The boy climbed onto the bike, hands trembling on the handlebars. Ethan moved alongside him, his chair's wheels cutting deep lines into the snow. They started slow, following the white path that wound between the old houses and empty fields. Every push burned in Ethan's arms, but he didn't stop. The boy kept pace, pedaling carefully, his laughter occasionally echoing through the still air. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel trapped. He felt alive. As the sun began to dip behind the hills, they reached the outskirts of town. Ahead stood a broken sign half buried in snow. Welcome to Maple Hollow. Population 4,020. Ethan smiled sadly. Guess that's out of date. Noah hopped off the bike, wiping snow from the sign. You think anyone's still here? Maybe, Ethan said. Or maybe it's just waiting for someone to come back. The boy turned, squinting at the long road ahead. How much farther to the railway? Couple miles, Ethan said. We'll make camp soon. Noah nodded, but Ethan could see exhaustion creeping into his face. The kid was trying to be strong, too strong for his age. Here, Ethan said, motioning to the blanket. Wrap up for a bit. I'll take first watch. You sure? Yeah? I've got plenty of night left in me. The boy smiled faintly and curled up beside the small fire they managed to spark from broken wood. Within minutes he was asleep, the red toy car still tucked in his pocket. Ethan watched him for a long time, the firelight flickering across his face. Something deep inside him stirred, a feeling he hadn't dared to name in years. It wasn't pity. It wasn't obligation. It was purpose. The night stretched long, the stars sharp above the silent fields. Ethan stared at the horizon, his breath turning to mist. For a while he let the silence fill him. Then softly he whispered into the dark, Lucas, if you're up there, kid, I'm still fixing things. Maybe not cars anymore. Maybe just hearts. The fire crackled in reply, and somewhere in the distance a train's whistle cut through the stillness. Faint, but real. Ethan looked up, eyes shining. Guess the road's still there after all. By dawn, they were back on the move. The sun broke over the ridge, painting the snow in shades of gold and rose. Noah pedaled ahead, his laughter carrying on the cold wind, while Ethan followed close behind, his wheelchair creaking but steady. The world was still broken, but now it was moving again. For the first time since the accident, Ethan felt like the man he used to be, a builder, a protector, a father. And as he watched Noah racing the wind, he realized something simple yet profound. Sometimes life gives you another chance, but it doesn't look like the one you lost. It comes smaller, colder, quieter, yet it burns just as bright. The morning sun climbed slowly over the horizon, turning the snow into a field of light. Ethan and Noah moved together, their breath misting in the cold air. The road ahead shimmered faintly, a path barely visible beneath the frost, but still there, always there. By midday, the fields began to thin, giving way to open plains. In the distance they saw it, a long stretch of metal glinting faintly under the sun, the railway line. Noah gasped. "You were right. There is a camp." Beyond the tracks, faint wisps of smoke curled into the sky. Ethan's chest tightened, not from fear but relief. They had made it this far. Against every reason, every weakness, they were here. He smiled. "Told you the road was still waiting for us," Noah beamed, pushing his bike ahead through the snow. The red toy car bounced in his pocket, tapping lightly with each step, a heartbeat of its own. When they reached the tracks, Ethan slowed. The rails stretched endlessly in both directions, vanishing into white. Beside them stood the remains of an old train station. Walls half collapsed, a roof caved in, but one corner still intact. Smoke rose gently from a small fire pit near the door. Noah looked around, uncertain. "You think anyone's here?" "Maybe," Ethan said. "Or maybe it's just another ghost." But before they could move closer, a voice called out from behind the ruins, "Who's there?" Noah froze, clutching the handlebars. Ethan lifted his hands slightly. "Just travelers," he called back. Looking for warmth. For a long moment, nothing. Then a figure appeared, a woman wrapped in a thick coat, her face hidden by a scarf. She studied them carefully, then lowered her guard. "Not many travelers this time of year," she said. "Come in, you'll freeze out there." Inside, the remnants of the station had been turned into a rough shelter. A few other people sat near the fire, tired, hollow-eyed, but alive. They offered a nod as Ethan and Noah entered. Ethan felt the warmth of the fire spread through his numb hands. The woman handed him a cup of something hot. "You're lucky," she said. "Most who try the road don't make it this far." Ethan smiled faintly. "Guess luck still remembers me." Noah wandered toward the corner where a group of kids sat sharing stories. Within minutes, he was laughing again, a sound that made Ethan's throat tighten with something close to joy. The woman noticed. "Your boy?" Ethan hesitated, looking toward Noah. The boy was smiling, showing the others his toy car, letting them touch it carefully, as if it were made of gold. After a long moment, Ethan said quietly, "Not by blood." Then softer, "But maybe by choice." The woman nodded, her eyes softening. "Sometimes that's stronger." As night fell, the wind howled outside, but inside the old station, the fire burned bright. Ethan shared stories of his days as a mechanic, of the garage that once smelled like oil and laughter. Noah listened from across the fire, eyes wide, hanging on every word. Later, when the others had drifted to sleep, Noah came to sit beside him. The boy leaned against Ethan's shoulder. "We made it," he whispered. Ethan smiled, his eyes glistening in the firelight. "Yeah, kid." "We did." Noah looked up at him. "What'll we do now?" Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the question. For the first time in years, he didn't answer out of fear or loss, but out of hope. "We start over," he said simply. "Maybe fix things for people here, build, help, whatever comes next. We face it together," the boy nodded, smiling. "Together." Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out the small red car. He handed it to Noah. "I think this belongs to you now." The boy's eyes widened. "But it was your son's." Ethan smiled softly. "He'd want someone to keep it racing." Noah held it carefully, staring at the bright paint reflecting the firelight. "Then I'll never let it stop," he whispered. Outside, the snow had stopped again. The world was silent, but no longer empty. The broken station stood like a beacon in the white, a place where lost souls had found warmth, where two strangers had become something like family. Ethan rolled toward the doorway, looking out across the endless tracks. The horizon glowed faintly pink as dawn began to rise once more. He whispered to himself, "Hope on wheels. Guess that's what we are." The wind picked up, carrying his words across the open fields. Behind him, Noah's laughter joined the sound, bright, alive, unbroken, and as the sun rose over the snow, it caught the gleam of a red toy car rolling gently across the floor, small, simple, but unstoppable.